Well, thank you for joining us today. And before we begin, let's briefly cover some housekeeping information. Auto-generated captions are available for today's session. And on Zoom, you can turn these on by selecting Show Captions in the Meeting Controls toolbar. Today's webinar is being recorded, and the video will be posted in A2I's YouTube channel in the next few days. And you can hear about this first by subscribing to their social media channels on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. Now, while the presentations are underway, we invite your comments and questions. You can do this via the Zoom Q&A button. And later in the webinar, we'll cover as many questions as we can in the discussion section. And all of the submissions will be reviewed when writing up the session. Okay, let's begin. My name is Richard Orme, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar on the role of accessible digital reading materials in achieving the SDGs and Zero Digital Divide. This event is a collaboration between the Aspire to Innovate programme of the Information and Communication Technology Division of the People's Republic of Bangladesh in association with the DAISY Consortium, the not-for-profit global authority on publishing and reading for people with blindness, low vision, and other print disabilities. And you've joined us today for a conversation with global experts on accessible reading materials and their role in fostering digital literacy and skills. Over the next hour, we'll explore strategies for leveraging technology to bridge the digital divide. And let's begin with opening remarks from Mollah Mizanur Rahman, who is Joint Project Director of the Aspire to Innovate program. Over to you.
Oh, thank you. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Welcome, distinguished audience. Thank you, Richard Orme, CEO of DAISY Consortium, for moderating today's session. Also, we are grateful to have Muhammad Munirul Islam, Additional Secretary at SDG Affairs, Prime Minister's Office, People's Republic of Bangladesh, as guest of honor. And I would like to appreciate all the distinguished panelists, Mr. Hiroshi Kawamura, Vice President, Assistive Technology Development Organization, ATDO, Halil Lövblad Monica, Head of the Accessible Books Consortium, WIPO, Dipendra Manocha, Chair, DAISY Forum, Mr. Monica Duhem, Director of Global Advocacy Center, Z3 ICT, and last of all, Mr. Bhaskar Bhattacharjee, the innovator. Before I proceed further, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and express our gratitude to the organizer, including the DAISY Consortium, for their commendable efforts in organizing this insightful webinar on the role of accessible digital reading materials in achieving the SDGs and Zero Digital Divide as a global leader in promoting accessible digital reading materials, digital accessibility and inclusive ICT practices, has been instrumental in raising awareness and advocating for the rights of individuals with disabilities worldwide. Over the years, Bangladesh has made significant progress in harnessing the power of technology to ensure digital inclusivity and empower its citizens. The journey towards digital accessibility began in 2008 when the government outlined its vision of a digital nation by 2021 in its election manifesto. The availability of e-government services has also experienced substantial growth, reaching 60.5 million in 2022. One of the notable achievements in the pursuit of digital accessibility is the establishment of various initiatives to benefit citizens with disabilities. The Multimedia Talking Book Initiative, Accessible Dictionary, and digital classrooms and labs in educational institutions have paved the way for inclusive education. The government has also digitized educational content, enabling students to access textbooks, examination results, and job applications online. While significant steps have been taken to make digital services accessible to people with disabilities, there is still progress to be made in this area. Recognizing the importance of ensuring the rights and protection of persons with disabilities, Bangladesh signed the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2007 and implemented the Rights and Protection of Persons with Disabilities Act 2013. To ensure accessibility in digital services, a guideline named Digital Service and Web Designing Guideline for Inclusive Accessibility 2022 has been developed following the international standard WCAG 2.1 guidelines. The Disability Innovative Lab under the A2I program has played a crucial role in providing technical advice and conducting accessibility assessments. All the websites developed by A2I have achieved an average accessibility rate as well. Looking forward, an inclusive smart Bangladesh leverages technology to empower people with disabilities, providing them with equal opportunities for education, employment, and participation in society. Through continued collaboration between government agencies, persons with disability, and various stakeholders, Bangladesh can create an ecosystem of innovation and inclusivity, leading the way toward a brighter and more equitable future. In conclusion, Bangladesh has achieved significant milestones in ensuring digital accessibility and empowering its citizens through various initiatives. The government's commitment to digital inclusivity, exemplified by the multimedia talking books, accessible dictionary, and other accessible services, has transformed the lives of people with disabilities and enhanced educational opportunities. As Bangladesh progresses towards becoming an inclusive smart nation, it is crucial to continue investing in accessible technology, promoting awareness, and fostering collaborations that will bring about a truly inclusive digital Bangladesh. Together, we can build a future where technology breaks down barriers and empowers every individual to thrive in the digital age. Last of all, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rahman, for those opening remarks that have set the context so wonderfully. So this webinar brings together global experts, advocates, and stakeholders to better understand the challenges faced by individuals with print disabilities in the context of accessible reading materials, to share knowledge and best practices, to promote collaboration among stakeholders, and to advocate for policy changes and industry standards that prioritize accessible reading materials. It's no small task, but we have a panel of global experts to guide and inform us. So at this stage, let's meet the panel, and I'd like each of them to introduce themselves with their name, their role, organization, and country that they're joining us from. So let's hear first from Hiroshi Kawamura.
Thank you, Richard. So this is my great honor and pleasure to deliver my message to this panel. Myself had a long-term experience of the academic library and the largest scale in Japan, serving to the users on campus, including people with disabilities. So after almost 30 years of experience, I changed my work to implement and establish the DAISY standard globally. And I'm one of the founders of the DAISY Consortium, and since 1998, and I have been working on around the open standard development regarding the accessible publishing. So DAISY is one of the accessible publishing technology, but right now we are shifting the focus to the accessible EPUB, which has all features of DAISY accessibility. So with this background, I would like to talk about the international human rights instruments and also the current development and some of the good practices which we can recognize. So first, I would like to draw your attention to the general comment of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Committee based in Geneva. The general comments number 2 on accessibility is a very comprehensive and comprehensive view on the accessibility, which bridges the implementation of CRPD and the SDGs. So we are now, from my point of view, shifting from the implementation of the CRPD to the implementation of SDGs, which has more wider aspects of inclusiveness in the social development. So in this context, I recommend to everybody to read through this most important document delivered by the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is called General Comment Number 2, issued in 2014. So regarding the bridging the digital divide or zero divide. So in the document, General Comment Number 2, paragraph 9, it refers to a very important aspects. I quote, accessibility was recognized by the mainstream ICT community since the first phase of the World Summit on the Information Society held in Geneva in 2003. Introduced and driven by the disability community, the concept was incorporated in the Declaration of Principles adopted by the summit, which in paragraph 25 state, quotation, the sharing and strengthening of global knowledge for development can be enhanced by removing barriers to equitable access to information for economic, social, political, health, cultural, educational, and scientific activities, and by facilitating access to public domain information, including by universal design and the use of assistive technologies. End quote. So this paragraph beautifully illustrate the methodology of how to challenge the bridging the gap by digital inclusion, by digital technology. And in general, we have been calling it as the digital opportunities. So the DAISY is one of the digital opportunity development endeavor. And we have been going through, following the WIS principle in publishing arena and also library services arena. And in order to disseminate DAISY across the world, we have conducted the DAISY for All project that included India, Bangladesh, Thailand in its development. And right now, we are very happy to see very good practices in those countries. And I'm looking forward to further development of the DAISY and accessible EPUB technologies, which will bring in the merger of the accessibility technologies. So far, that has been developed for the text-based contents and motion picture-based contents on the platform of EPUB in the near future. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Hiroshi, thank you so much for joining us from Japan to tell us about international laws and conventions regarding accessible information and best practices around the world, and reflecting, of course, on the collaboration that we have had over the years between DAISY Consortium and Bangladesh. So Monica Halil Lövblad is head of the Accessible Books Consortium, often referred to as ABC. And I now invite Monica to speak on the implications of the Marrakesh WIPO Treaty and its impact on the Global South. Monica.
Just trying to get my slides up. Sorry. Hi, everybody. My name is Monica Halil.
Monica.
You've got it? Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Monica Halil Lövblad, and I'm speaking to you from Geneva in Switzerland. I'm a staff member of the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is a United Nations specialized agency. WIPO is responsible for the Marrakesh Treaty and the related Accessible Books Consortium, which I'm going to talk to you about today. And in fact, it complements very nicely what Hiroshi just spoke to you about with respect to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So let's put this down. So Hiroshi was mentioning just now the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, in particular comment number 2 from the committee. And I'd like to talk to you about the Marrakesh Treaty to facilitate access to published works for persons who are blind, visually impaired, or otherwise print disabled. Now, this is a treaty that is administered by the World Intellectual Property Organization. It was signed or adopted in 2013 in Marrakesh, Morocco, and it came into force in 2016 when the 20th country ratified the treaty. It is WIPO's fastest growing treaty and currently has 95 contracting parties covering 121 countries since the European Union joined in one block. And Bangladesh ratified the treaty in September 2022. So this is a treaty to which Bangladesh is a party. So what does the Marrakesh Treaty do? It's a more narrow treaty as compared to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, in that it covers people who are blind, have low vision, are dyslexic, or have mobility impairments that impact their ability to read the printed word. That means, for example, someone who is paralyzed and cannot turn the pages of a book. So it would also cover such persons. So this treaty, sorry, I'm just changing my screen. Just to give you a bit of background to the adoption of the treaty, sort of why is there this treaty? It is estimated that there are 253 million people around the world who are blind or visually impaired. That's through the Lancet, the medical journal. And the World Blind Union estimates that less than 10% of all published material is accessible, and that 90% of children who are blind and developing or least developed countries do not go to school. So there was quite a context when the World Blind Union lobbied for the adoption of this treaty, as well as WIPO member states. So what does the Marrakesh Treaty do? It works within the area of copyright law in countries, and there are two main principles that are required in the Marrakesh Treaty for the benefit of people who are blind or otherwise print disabled. And what are those two main principles? It permits or requires for a country that has ratified the treaty, that country then has to implement international law, a provision in the law that allows for the production of accessible format copies of books. So for example, in Braille, in audio, or in e-text for people who are blind or print disabled, without the need to request permission from the copyright owner. That's the first main principle. The second main principle is to allow for the cross-border exchange of these accessible format copies for the benefit of people who are print disabled in other countries who also are located in countries that have ratified and implemented the provisions of the treaty. Again, the exchange would take place without the need to request permission from the copyright owner. So there are these two main principles that are required once a country ratifies the treaty. Now, how do you once a country has ratified the treaty and implemented the provisions in national law, you also then need practical initiatives to get books, accessible books, into the hands of people who are print disabled within the country. And so I'm going to tell you about the Accessible Books Consortium, which is, I'm head of the Accessible Books Consortium, and what we do to try to make the objectives of the Marrakesh Treaty a reality. So this is a public-private partnership, which is led by WIPO. We have many partners, including the DAISY Consortium, the International Publishers Association, the World Blind Union, the International Federation of Reproduction Rights Organizations, the International Council for the Education of People with Visual Impairment. It was launched in 2014 to implement the objectives of the treaty, as I mentioned. We're actually very proud to say that we're celebrating our 10th anniversary this year. And our goal is to deliver accessible books, again, Braille, audio, e-text, to people who are print disabled. So what do? We have something called the ABC Global Book Service, which is a catalog of accessible books. We have nearly 1 million accessible titles in 80 languages available for cross-border exchange under the framework of the Marrakesh Treaty. The Young Power and Social Action, it's IPSA, YPSA from Bangladesh, joined the ABC Global Book Service in 2020. And we're very happy to partner with IPSA. And last year, we delivered 163,000 titles, accessible format copies, to people who are print disabled at no cost. So this is a free service that we provide to organizations serving people who are print disabled, whereby they can then access and look at the catalog and download titles, all under the condition that the organization is located in a country that has ratified and implemented the provisions of the treaty. We also provide training and technical assistance to organizations serving people who are print disabled. Actually, our very first project of training and technical assistance was with YPSA, IPSA, in Bangladesh in 2015 with Vashkar, who's going to speak to you later. And from then we had our first project in Bangladesh. And since then, in the past 9 years, we've established projects in 42 low-income countries. We provide training in how to produce accessible books. We developed together with the DAISY Consortium, actually Richard and Dipendra on the call were key in getting this up off the ground during the COVID period. We have ABC online courses in accessible book production developed for NGOs, including an online STEM course. And through these projects in 42 countries over the past 9 years, we've funded the production of 19,000 educational books in national languages in accessible formats. So again, this is one of the things that ABC does to try to make sort of accessible books and delivering accessible books to people who are blind or otherwise print disabled as a part of the goals of the Marrakesh Treaty. Finally, I also wanted to tell you, we try to promote accessible publishing. So where commercial publishers produce books sort of from the beginning as a sort of audiobook or e-text book that is accessible for people who are blind. And we, together again with the DAISY Consortium, developed a course called Accessible Publishing Concepts course, which is currently available in Arabic, English, French, and Spanish. You can take it for free. It's a 2 to 3 hour self-study course. You get a certificate at the end. And you can register on our homepage, which is www.accessiblebooksconsortium, all in one word, .org. I'm going to stop there, and I'll see. Well, I hope we'll have some questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And that's a useful reminder for those questions to continue to come in. I see we have some already. Monica, thank you for explaining the implications of the Marrakesh Treaty and the amazing work of the Accessible Books Consortium. Happy 10th birthday. So we've heard already about the importance of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Let's hear further about the role of the UN in achieving disability-inclusive education. Dr. Monica Duhem is Director of Global Advocacy Center at G3 ICT. Monica is founder of Here Colors and an expert in access to telecommunications services and ICT. So, Monica, please go ahead, share your screen and tell us more.
Thank you. Thank you, Richard. And thank you very much for inviting me to discuss a little bit further. I think that, access to information, access to education is the only way that we have to move forward. So I think it's a very important topic. So what the UN is an enabler, as Dr. Kawamura just said, Monica also rephrased, the UN is the enabler through their conventions, through their treaties. He will be the organization that will help every country really to get organized, to identify what are the laws, what are the regulations that need to be developed, what are these sustainable goals, as they said, that we need to reach in order to ensure the elimination of the digital divide, the economic and social development of everyone. So the UN as an enabler has different agencies that will ensure the development and the achieving of different goals in different areas. And in that sense, of course, we've talked about the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. That is the fastest ratified treaty of the UN. 190 states have ratified the CRPD. And this is very important because in Article 9, it was mentioned the importance and the right to access technology. More and more with the digital transformation, services and vital services, I'm going to say, and vital actions are being delivered on digital environments. So it is crucial that really governments and even private companies and private consortiums understand how these digital environments are accessible. So as Monica just said, the Marrakesh Treaty is key because we need to provide all the tools available for countries to be able to achieve this goal of zero digital divide. So the UN not only deliver the treaties, the UN not only provide recommendations on how could we at the national level develop those laws, but they have specific bodies as UNESCO, as UNDP, as UNICEF, that will in their own ambience of influence will monitor the progress towards inclusive education in the case of what we are at hand, the importance of readable materials. So those three organizations within the UN, those three bodies will monitor the advance of different countries at the national level, the development of pertinent laws and policies. They will data collection on how we at the national level at advancing and reaching more and more people and achieving those specific goals. Those also UN bodies will create awareness raising around the importance of inclusive education, creating campaigns and publication and events. So the UN is really a key enabler in inclusive education. On one hand, not only will provide this from an international law point of view, what is the framework, what are the targets, and the countries' goals in a sense, and our obligations, since we have ratified those treaties, but also will monitor the progress and will create campaigns to awareness raising. So that's they do play a big role in this overall achieving inclusive education, and specifically the Sustainable Development Goal number 4. No, so they work collaboratively with governments, with civil society organizations, and other stakeholders to promote really the understanding of what do we mean by inclusive digital readable materials. So that's another, I think, a very important role. The UN has through all the relationship with stakeholders needs for us to understand what it is understood by inclusive digital material. And I think that's key, because in my work at the G3 ICT, we've seen so many misunderstanding of what inclusion and accessibility is. So many at the national level understand accessibility by access. And it's not the same. Access is one thing, accessibility is another thing. And in many cases, also we understand accessibility and it's misguided, and we think of accessibility as affordability, so for free. And of course, it's important that all those materials are affordable. It is important that we have access to technology, so we're able to interact in the digital arena, but it's not the same as accessibility. So I think that UN plays a crucial role with all its different bodies to really make understand the message, what is meant by accessibility and what is needed. Not only accessibility is different than affordability, accessibility is different than connectivity. So I think that's crucial when we're talking about eliminating the digital divide, a clear understanding of what we understand. And the DAISY plays, I think, a key role, because they do have open source standards. They are the ones who are saying, this is accessible. This is a reading material that is accessible. These are the standards, how you make sure that this material is accessible. And that's what we understand by accessibility. So I think that we need together, the different stakeholders still need not only to create awareness on the importance of inclusion in education, but also how do we understand inclusion and what are the different areas of inclusion. Some of the barriers, of course, of implementation, inclusive digital environments for education are capacity buildings. And I think Monica just said, we need to develop inclusive education policies. In our policies, we need to clearly indicate their targets, and we clearly indicate the definition of what we understand by accessibility. And I think it seems straightforward, but it is not. If people do not understand accessibility, even if we put it in our laws, but we don't explain it, it can be understood in different ways. So develop those policies is key. Building infrastructure, we need, once it's developed, the law is created, the definition is there, the standards are there, and the standards are referenced in the laws. We need to build this infrastructure. We need to build this accessible digital infrastructure. We need to train teachers and other education personnel in the teaching method and inclusive teaching methods and the creation of inclusive digital materials, so everybody has access to those materials. And I think we just saw from what Monica just presented, to improve this data collection and also the quantity of material that is readable and accessible for everyone. So that's I think the main barriers, and the UN, in the sense with the different bodies, need to work together in coordination, making sure that we're advancing in those barriers. And well, finally, from my experience, as you know, G3ICT does also have the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. We need to create technical experts. It's not only a matter of knowing accessibility, but it is a technical issue plenty of time. So we need to develop these accessibility centers of excellence that will provide technical support in the countries, in the schools, in order to be able to, from a technical standpoint, being able to transform those contents and to really provide the digital educational content that we need, readable for everyone, according to the standards. So this is part of what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much.
Monica, thank you for joining us from Mexico to help us understand the UN as an enabler in driving forward the mission of accessible information and reaching zero digital divide. And as you said so clearly, this is the only way. It's not optional. And you stress the importance of awareness, training, standards, technical support, professional development, and monitoring. You crammed a lot of information into that short time. Thank you for that. Okay, so Dipendra Manocha is the director of the Developing Countries Programme with the DAISY Consortium and the elected president of the DAISY Forum of India. And Dipendra, now will you tell us please about Born Accessibility and the next generation standardized accessible reading materials?
Thank you so much, Richard, and so delighted to be part of this event along with our friends from Bangladesh and people sitting on the dais and part of the panel here. We have seen that, let me start with a small story here, which happened in India. I'm coming from New Delhi, India, actually. So we worked with our National Textbook Board, and we, as civil society organizations, put in a lot of financial resources to convert all textbooks into accessible format. We roughly spent about $14,000 in converting large number of textbooks into accessible format. It took about 6 months after the start of the session to convert all that. We were very happy, but after 6 months, the textbook board decided to make just about small little changes here and there. There were about roughly 310 small changes made in different parts of the books. And when we said that, share where all those changes have been made, is that we don't know now. It was done by some other department. We don't have that data. Which meant that if we continued to distribute the books that we converted into accessible format, under the exceptions, under all those copyright exceptions that we got in India, all those were outdated. And only way for us was to again do the same whole exercise and put all those money back into reproducing, recreating all those textbooks into accessible format. These kind of changes in textbooks actually happen almost every year or every second year. And in 3-4 years, the entire textbooks are actually changed in many, many places. So what it is actually saying is that We also know that the books, even for normal print, the mainstream books, are born digital. And whatever is born digital actually can be made accessible digital. So if that happens, then the recreation of the whole world, recreation of every publication that is coming out into accessible format, re-digitization of the whole publishing globe into accessible format again will not be necessary. So that is exactly what we mean by born accessible. What is the right way? What should have been the right way in that story that I just said? That the books that are the digital books that are being created for publishing, they should be created in a way that makes it accessible for all. We can take a normal print from that same digital. We can create accessible EPUBs. We can create accessible PDFs. We could even convert those materials into Braille using the same digital master. And if any change happens, right from day one, as soon as the book gets published, it is available in accessible format. That is the real power of inclusive publishing and born accessible. How would that happen? Obviously, our policies and laws have a very, very large role to play in all that. For example, we are currently in a very exciting time when European Accessibility Act has come into force and has given time till 2025 for all publishers to have all their, not just the new books, but even the older books converted into accessible format. Inclusive publishing has been made part of the Accessibility Act. In India, of course, like Bangladesh, we have our Rights for Persons with Disabilities Act, which clearly says that all media and publications, whether it is print media, books, etc., everything has to be accessible. Then in 2022, in India, there was a standard notified by Bureau of Indian Standards called IS 17802 that clearly defines what do we mean by accessibility. It did not stop at harmonizing with WCAG 2.1. It also acknowledged ISO standards such as EPUB accessibility guidelines, PDF UA for PDF documents, or the accessibility guidelines issued for even Microsoft Word. All that has been included, saying that it's not just a website, but also the digital documents going on those websites that have to be made accessible. And these are the standards that define that what do we mean by PDF accessible? What do we mean by EPUB being accessible? All those definitions have been adopted as part of the Indian standard. It's so good, of course, but now the difficult path of implementation still remains. We have to move forward and make sure that these rules are actually implemented. There's sufficient time. Very critical part here is that these standards, which are adopted, nationally are harmonized with the international standards. How does it help? Because ultimately, it's the implementation which will have the real impact. The industry is not just your national industry. A lot of this industry is international industry. And people like Microsoft or Google or Amazon's, once they are compliant with any international standards on accessibility, and if our national standards to its maximum extent are harmonized with these international standards, those accessibility things become a normal, natural gift even for our own nations. So that's where the importance of harmonization with the international standards play a huge role, that it makes it easier for the industry to implement the laws and those standards on accessibility. Why is it important? Of course, because when we are talking about accessible or born accessible, it's not just about persons with disabilities. It's not just for people who are print disabled. But these standards actually ensure that it provides a very extremely rich reading experience for all. The websites, the accessible publications that we are talking about, they are good for reading for everybody, not just for persons with disability. So inclusive publishing actually goes much beyond just for making or providing a good and excellent reading experience just for persons with disabilities. It's a rich reading experience for all. And that is why it is very important that let's not create a world and let's not be satisfied by just the exceptions. They're just a fallback. Exceptions are like fallback mechanism, that if something is not born accessible, at least we have the right to make it accessible to ensure right to education, etc. But the real impact will be created when the whole publishing world complies to international standards and they are born accessible, and each and every publication that comes out is accessible right at the time of its release. Thank you so much, Richard.
Great, great. Well, Dipendra, thank you for illustrating with your story there of how born accessible publishing addresses the challenges of processes that are based on copyright exceptions, which are not only inefficient, using public and charitable funds, but also can extend the inequality and the digital divide because people with print disabilities maybe get their materials later or sometimes never at all. And yet, as you explained, the opportunity is there to take advantage of harmonized international standards, of accessibility laws, such as the European Accessibility Act, and tools such as those from the DAISY Consortium to help make this happen in a way that's never been possible before now. And you also told us how accessible publishing is good for everyone, not only people with disabilities. Well, that's the end of the presentations from our panel, and we've learned a lot. Please keep your questions coming in on the Q&A channel. We'll cover as many as we can in the available time, and all the submissions will be reviewed when we're writing up the session. But before we turn to our audience for those comments and questions, I'd like to ask Bhaskar Bhattacharjee to speak for 5 minutes as he showcases multimedia talking books and innovation for inclusive education. Bhaskar.
Participants. Richard, thank you very much. I hope I am audible. Thank you very much. From Hiroshi Kawamura to all panelists. I sent the CR English to Zoom wrote to FS Reader. Can you, am I audible?
Yes,
We're
sir.
hearing you and we're
Yes.
hearing your screen reader too. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You will get some voice from my computer as I am persons with visual disability using assistive technology such as screen reading software. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my presentations. That is, we would like to demonstrate a innovation from Bangladesh that's called DAISY Multimedia Talking Book, which is innovated in 2012 and which was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister of the Bangladesh, and which is one of the award-winning innovations. I would like to take some. You are seeing a book on the screen, which is I think people who can see and who can read Bangla, they can read the books. So these books are universally designed, and the persons with visual and print disability can listen this book. You can see. Even this book is talking about a bird and with the picture and describing the picture in such a manner, then persons with visual disability can listen this book. This book is fully accessible for people with visual and print disabilities. We can read this book by seeing, by listening, and also by using braille display. That means anyone can use this book without any barrier. This is one of the finest innovation by the A2I. With the collaboration of a local NGO called IPSA. So these innovations is ensured accessible books for children with disabilities, grade 1 to grade 10. And as we have innovated multimedia talking book, hence we are able to produce braille books since 2015. As a person with visual disability, I never ever received any accessible books during my study. Because of this multimedia talking book, we just solved one problem, which is reading problem for the persons with visual and print disabilities in Bangladesh. And thousands of students are receiving books in the beginning of the educational year, which is supported by National Curriculum and Textbook Board. Thank you, A2I, for supporting this innovation. And now currently we are working with the WIPO and Accessible Book Consortium for having our next generation accessible ebook, which called EPUB 3 ebook. We are expecting the new curriculum will become accessible by this year, and their book will be accessible for everyone, not only for persons with visual and print disabilities. That would be accessible for all. Another innovation I would like to show you here. Speech, vote, talk. Screen share English to Bengali English. This is the dictionary you are seeing. This is the 4 dictionary we have innovated. Bengali to English, English to Bengali, Bengali to Bengali, English to English. This is dictionary. Increase, decrease, English, type your word. If I write here. Next, choose a unit English, type your word, edit which mainland J-O-Y. I think international folks, you can learn one Bengali word, that is joy. Joy means list with 1 item. Noun. Anando. Gobir Horsho. Anando. Gobir Horsho. Now left paren, right paren. Anando. Gobir Horsho. Joy means Anando. And another word, Gobir Horsho. So this is accessible for everyone. Anyone can use this dictionary. This is accessibledictionary.gov.bd. This is also innovation by the A2I, supported by A2I. So these innovations, I think almost 6 billion people use this dictionary since this inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister of Bangladesh in 2018. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take some opportunity to thanking the people who have contributed a lot for making accessible books available for Bangladesh. In 2002, I had a great honor to meet Hiroshi Kawamura, who called as a father of the DAISY. I just shows my agony regarding the reading materials issues. I just tell him, like, I have a dream to solve one problem of my nation, that is accessible reading materials. We want to ensure accessible reading materials for all, including visual and print disabilities. He told me, oh, that is not your dream. This is our dream. Let us work together to solve this problem. And since then, we have started work with the Hiroshi Kawamura DAISY Consortium. And also there is an organization called IPSA where I have started my career. And later, Digital Bangladesh came. That is a turning point for the people with disabilities in Bangladesh. And we have started with work with A2I, and A2I lead the process. And we are very pleased to know, you will be very pleased to know that Bangladesh has ratified the Marrakesh VIP Treaty. And A2I has led the process. And we will be very grateful to everyone, to our Honorable Prime Minister, to our government, that they are considering accessible reading materials as human rights. I hope we'll able to ensure equal reading opportunity for all. Thank you, Dipendra Manocha ji, for your continuous support. Thank you, Richard. And thank you, Monica Dewan. I am serving as your country representative in Bangladesh. So hopefully we'll able to ensure our rights through the UNCRPD and our laws. And I'd like to acknowledge another organization's name, that is Bookshare. They are also providing free membership to the visual and print disabilities in Bangladesh. And also through this Bookshare, there is thousands of, I think almost hundreds of visual and print disabilities are getting accessible books. With the support of Accessible Book Consortium, thousands of people with disabilities are getting accessible a smartphone and also the accessible reading materials. Thank you everyone.
Perfect. Bashka, thank you for those practical examples of digital accessibility in action. If you're able to stop sharing your screen, we'll be back then. And this then is the conclusion of the panel presentations and the demonstration. And we have a few minutes now where we're able to take some questions and comments. So there's a couple that will go to Monica and Dipendra, and then a couple will come to Hiroshi and to Monica. So the first question, actually, we had several questions relating to training from Mohammed Moksala Rahman, from Bhutan Yonten, from Sense International, and from some anonymous attendees. The questions are, how can we get the training that was referred to? Are there associated costs for disabled persons organizations? Also, we have attendees from many countries attending this webinar. So we got the question, is the training available to people from other countries? So maybe Monica, Halil, and then Dipendra, you could speak to these questions here on the theme of training and technical support.
Thank you very much, Richard. So yes, normally the Accessible Books Consortium has a call for expressions of interest. So basically calls for applications from organizations serving people who are print disabled, who are blind or otherwise print disabled. So you send in an application, and then we review the applications, and then we provide training in accessible book production and funding to produce educational curriculum materials. I will send you, normally it's best if you sign up for the ABC newsletter. I'll put it into the chat so that you sign up for it, because we announce the call for applications through our newsletter. We don't currently have one open, we just closed one, but there should be one coming up shortly. And I'll also put our email if you have questions, and our website, so you can look at a previous call for applications to get a sense of the criteria. So is it best if I put it in the Q&A or if I put it in the webinar chat? I'm not quite sure where I should put this information.
So if you post it in both those places, Monica, and then we mentioned earlier that we're recording the session, and so there will be an article, and there's the social media channels as well. So the information will get out there, and the answers to all the questions we're covering today when people have mentioned websites and so on. So thank you for sharing. The thing to do is to sign up to the mailing list to learn about those announcements. So Dipendra, do you have anything to add on this question that was asked many times? People are maybe producing materials now. They want access maybe to that training and technical support. Do you have more to add to Monica's answer?
Certainly. And so there are learning and training is very critical to ensuring accessibility. And to do that, we have actually created online training materials, which are actually currently available to everybody completely free of cost, both at ABC's ABC Academy. You could access training materials. You could register there, and also from DAISY Consortium, we could go to learning.daisy.org and just register yourself and have access to free of cost training materials. If you need instructor-driven trainings, there are some costs associated with it. We actually have just launched registrations for our first training program on behalf of DAISY Consortium, which will be available to for people costing about, say, $100 per person, but in low and middle income group countries, organization, there is $50. And also there is scope for applying for sponsorships, which will make it $0. So these courses are actually available. You can register for them. We can, we can share the links, etc., with the participants on where to go and register for such courses. So yeah, I mean, training and technical support is available. You can always, at any time, contact us at daisy.org. If you have any further questions, if you are actually doing something and need some clarifications, that technical support is available any day of the year. You can just join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipendra. Well, just respectful of the time of the panelists, of the attendees on the webinar, and also we're eager to hear from our chief guests. Let's move then to the questions that will go to Hiroshi and to Monica Duhem. These are more at the policy level. So the question came in from Jay Rukmal. This was from Sri Lanka. We also had the question from Muhammad Islam in Bangladesh around when new curriculum is published, are they accessible to people with persons with blindness? So what reflections, Hiroshi and Monica, would you have at a policy level that will ensure that not only books from publishers, but from government institutions are accessible to everyone and maybe within UN and a national context? So Hiroshi, your thoughts on this important area of access to information?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. And so I think the curriculum has to be used and implemented based on the legal requirement in each country because of the compulsory education requirements, etc. And in addition to that, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities should be implemented to guarantee the access to the equitable education. So those are the tools, but in reality, sometimes the technical difficulty could be the excuse for the publisher and the government. So I think we have been developing the technology which meet the requirements of those print disabled students, including blind students, including those curriculum. I think those technical solutions need to be applied to when it comes to the curriculum, which is very complex sometimes, including mathematical equations, etc. So therefore, technology advancement need to be applied to the curriculum accessibility. So that's a point. We need to develop the international network so that we can cooperate each other.
Thank you, Hiroshi. And Monica Duhem, your thoughts on the policies and access to government and education content?
And I think a big improvement can be done if we stop thinking about accessibility in silos. So what I've seen in many regulations, so it's special schools, or if we think of higher education, they will only start implementing accessibility reacting to we have new students and the students have a disability. So it is important that we stop thinking accessibility in silos, we stop thinking about target groups, and we include in our laws just the obligation of making all the digital materials accessible, and that's it. So even through the procurement process also have a great impact if in our procurement laws we include the reference to standards. So all those publishers that wants to sell their publication and digital publication to governments will be obliged to comply with those standards. So my two main recommendations will be to stop thinking accessibility in silos and start including that as a mainstream condition for digital content, and also to include in not only in our general laws but also in our procurement laws when where the government's going to procure new content, to make sure that again it's not siloed and we include the reference to standards.
Thank you, Monica. Well, we're short on time, so I'll just read out some of the comments that have come in from our attendees. Thank you for those. We'll be carefully going over them all after the webinar. So we had the comment to say we're very happy to see the progress already made in Bangladesh. I think, Vashkar, this was aimed at your demonstration. Thanks to the Bangladesh government, A2I program, DAISY Consortium, and other partners. Now we need to be more innovative to ensure inclusive and collaborative programs and services. We had the comment, it's a really nice discussion on the betterment of accessible information for people with visual disabilities. From Severian Gragba from the Ministry of Digital Transition and Digitalization of Côte d'Ivoire. We're hearing that they also are working on this topic, working hard. And from Ayesha Tassin was stressing the importance that these accessible options also reach people in hard-to-reach areas and communities. And more comments and questions that we didn't have time to turn to, but thank you for those. So that's all the questions and comments we have time for right now. And now we move towards the closing session. And it's my distinct pleasure to ask our guest of honor to make the closing remarks. Mr. Mohammed Monirul Islam is Additional Secretary for SDG Affairs in the Prime Minister's Office of the Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Mr. Monirul, what are your thoughts, please, having heard the discussion among leaders from Bangladesh and global experts over the last hour?
Thank you, Moderator, for your excellent moderation of the session, and distinguished panelists who have done the task very eloquently, and distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute honor and privilege to be part of this remarkable international dialogue on the role of accessible digital reading materials in achieving the SDGs and Zero Digital Divide. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to DAISY Consortium and Aspire to Innovate for organizing this wonderful event. Today, we gather with a shared commitment to creating a more inclusive society where no one is left behind in the digital age. As we march to achieve the vision of Smart Bangladesh, we must bring the digital divide and make accessible reading material to all, regarding of their abilities or background. According to the World Health Organization, about 15% of the world population has some form of disability. In this age of information technology, various steps have been taken internationally to ensure equal participation of all citizens, including persons with disabilities, ensuring inclusive education. Persons with disabilities are addressed in 4 goals of the United Nations SDGs, particularly SDG 4, education, SDG 8, economic growth, SDG 10, reducing inequality, SDG 11, urban settlement, and SDG 17, global partnership. Apart from the goals, there are a couple of indicators where the persons with disability has been, particularly SDG 1.3.1, reducing poverty, and 16.7.1, that is governance issue. Over the past 2 years, Bangladesh has embarked on an spanning journey towards embracing digital inclusivity, particularly focusing on areas like e-learning, policy development, accessible web and e-service, and digital finance services in both remote and rural regions. These milestones stand as testimony to the nation's commitment to creating an inclusive, digital-friendly society. Bangladesh is among the first 20 countries in the world to sign and ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, UNCRPD. In line with the UNCRPD, the government enacted the Rights and Persons of Disability Act 2013. You are pleased to know that Bangladesh government recently adopted adoption of the Digital Service and Web Designing Guideline for the Inclusive Accessibility 2022 signifies an exceptional stride towards ensuring equitable digital across for every citizen. These guidelines is maintaining international standard. In 2022, Bangladesh became the 116th nation in the world to ratify the Marrakesh WIPO Treaty to improve access to book and reading for the country's people with visual and print disabilities. Presenting a groundbreaking innovation in education, textbooks have been transformed into multimedia talking books, which have already shown today, ensuring accessibility for all students, including those with visual impairments. This progressive approach extends to students with disability who now receive accessible books at the onset of the academic year, paralleling their peers. This initiative not only ensures inclusivity, but also showcases the power of technology in fostering equitable education. For this reason, in SDG, we say that technology is digital friendly. Let us begin by acknowledging the significant pace made by Bangladesh in promoting inclusivity in smart practices. The Inclusive Smart Bangladesh initiative of Vision 2041 is an evidence to our commitment to building a society where every individual, including those with disabilities, can participate actively in their digital renovation. This visionary initiative envisions a future where digital services prioritize universal design, making them accessible to all citizens, including those with disabilities. By targeting the development of accessible digital services and materials such as e-learning contents, we aim to ensure that no one is left behind in the digital realm. The aspiration that is envisioned by the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as by our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. And definitely the question you raised from the panelists, distinguished panelists, they have elaborated their positions and the way digital transforming digitalization, which has enabled the way for particularly the disabled person in their thinking, in their understanding, and also the reading and writing of the latest curricula. So just based on my understanding, I'm a person of SDG, not the person with the persons with disability. We all usually says this in our everyday life. But since the government of Bangladesh has encompassed all the policy strategies in line with the SDGs, definitely A2I, with our aspire to innovate, has taken the technology in the forefront to make it as an enabler for making it the inclusive society across the country. So from this particular session, and from the distinguished panelists, they have mentioned, and also the questions raised today, particularly very interesting. It reveals that the participants not only joined, but they have inquisitiveness about these issues, and the responses made that yes, a disabled person across the countries are available to get their information when they can enroll and become a member or something like that, as mentioned here. So the write-up from this workshop will definitely pave the way for other who have not joined here, but will definitely will be benefited from this session. Thank you very much for giving me the time to say something on this occasion. Thank you. Joy Bangla.
Thank you, Mr. Monirul, for inspiring, encouraging, and optimistic closing remarks. Because we know that people with print disabilities face unacceptable barriers to reading and education when information is published in a way that doesn't work for them. So we know that also there are organizations with decades of experience producing accessible publications all around the world. In fact, using the free of cost technologies developed by Daisy and others, millions of books, journals, newspapers, and documents are made accessible so they can be read by people with disabilities in a way that works for them. This is whether someone needs to read through enlarged text, through audio or braille, on whatever continent and in whatever language. There are technologies and standards that have been developed by the DAISY Consortium that can make that information accessible to everyone, irrespective of disability. So our mission, shared by our host today, our panelists, and our chief guest, is that education and reading is accessible to millions of people with disabilities. Okay, we're coming to the end of this webinar, and the webinar has been recorded and the video will be posted in A2I's YouTube channel in the next few days. And you can hear about this first by making sure you're subscribed to their social media channels on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on X. This webinar has been a collaboration between the A2I program of the Information and Communication Technology Division of the People's Republic of Bangladesh in association with the DAISY Consortium. Once again, a huge thank you to Mr. Rahman, Hiroshi Kawamura, Monica Halil, Dr. Duhem, Dipendra Manocha, Vashkar Bhattacharjee, and our guest of honor, Mr. Mizanur, for giving us the benefit of your knowledge and expertise on the role of accessible reading materials in achieving the SDGs and zero digital divide. To everyone who joined us on Zoom and Facebook, thank you for your time. Stay safe and well, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Sir, can you take a picture, sir?
Great. Let's panelists, please stay. We'll make sure your cameras are on and we'll do a group photo. So nice big smile.